Good afternoon and welcome to Tuesday Metro. I'm your host, Jose Silva, and I'm just so excited to be with all of you. And so thank you to our listeners in Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, and all those listening on 88.5 FM, 1390 AM. It's because of you, our listener members, that we're still able to be here with you all during all of this. And as I stated with you all 2 weeks ago, we are in a space of transition and a new normal, especially for all of us here at KGNU. And so we're not in studio. I'm in my home, and our guest Lisa Weiss is in her home, and we are just going to have a great show today talking about the state of education. And I think everything that we're going through kind of adds and even elevates this conversation even more, especially for our youngins and our littles. And so while all of you are out there today in the midst of what is taking place in this world and in the midst of what you are going through, I hope that this time together, this 30 minutes together, can give you some insight and some support and thoughts and ideas on how you can engage. Because I think sometimes we can feel like the victim in a lot of the circumstances that we can end up in. If it's dealing with battling a school system for our children, if it's trying to find food to feed our family in this, or if it's even just struggling with our own mental wellness and being able to make it and feel like we can open our eyes and make it another day. And so I want to tell you all today, you are surviving, you are making it, and congratulations, you made it another 2 weeks. And I promise you, when this is all said and done, we will all celebrate together. And so with that, Lisa, good afternoon. It is a blessing to have you. And I'm just so glad that we've been able to connect over the last few months. How are you doing today, yesterday, with all of this?
I'm doing well, actually. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to do this. I'm happy to talk about this and so happy to know you. I'm doing fine, actually. Yeah, it's been an interesting experience for my family, for sure.
Definitely, And so, Lisa, if you would just like to tell our listeners a little bit about you and your background and how you kind of come to this conversation.
Sure. So I have been working in civil rights. I'm a lawyer. But I primarily practice in mediation. I'm not a litigator, but I have been a mediator and have been working on behalf of children and people with disabilities in the public education system since 1999. And most recently, I have been working as a special education policy specialist for the state, for the Colorado Department of Education. I just left there in July. So that's really, I guess, who I am professionally is an education policy specialist. And I am also a mom. So I come to you with all of those things. I have 3 teenagers. I have twins.
Bless your heart. In this time.
I have twins who are almost 18. They're all in high school. So I have twins that are almost 18 and I have a 14-year-old. And so that's how I come to.
What would you say, and we're going to get to the components of all of the work that you're doing, what has been one of the lessons being at home with 3 teenagers over the last couple of 4 weeks that you've learned, that you've noticed? I like asking that question.
I think what's been so interesting for me that's been really different from a lot of folks that I know, I come from a kind of tribe of people who have kids with challenges or have family members with challenges. My kids are all educationally identified now as being twice exceptional, which means that they're all gifted and they all have some challenge that makes it difficult for them to access general education without specialized supports. And so my struggle has not been in the last 4 weeks. My struggle has actually been over the last 3 years. And what's interesting is that I am, in many, many ways, I'm unaffected by what has happened in the last 4 weeks because I've been having to figure out how to get my kids access to education at home for the last 3 years. So I actually come at this probably with more experience than most typical families do, I guess. But there are a lot of us out there, and I think that what's really fascinating to me is that all of the kids being out of school and having to go virtual is highlighting all of the issues that I've known about, certainly for the last 3 years myself, and that many of the people in my tribe have been dealing with for years and years and years.
I think you hit it right on the nail. And when you were saying, I have been unaffected in some ways by this because this has been my normal of fighting for access. And so I've been watching a lot of the conversations around access and the loss in that conversation, and some people not knowing there's this grieving piece. And so I think about individuals like you that have to live this on a continuum and fighting as an education policy specialist. What do you think could be some of the lessons? Well, what should be then some of the lessons for some of our educators and our policy-minded folks that maybe not have listened before, but this is a reality check for them where they are going to have to listen now?
Well, I think that one of the most glaring issues that I've seen throughout the state, and certainly in my own school district, is a lack of, it's a policy issue. It's something called child find. And there are a lot of kids out there who are, I guess you would maybe put them into the category of dropouts. And they start dropping out of the school system. That's kind of a negative. I think it's been used or thought of as a negative word, but really the word just means they're dropping out of the school system. They're not able to stay in the school system. And I think we have, I don't know what the numbers really look like, honestly, because I think that those can be really skewed depending on what schools do with their numbers and how they count their students and when they count their students and those kinds of things. But I've noticed, certainly over the last 6 years when I've been with the Colorado Department of Education, that there are large numbers of kids who are dropping out really, really early on. And that is really, from my perspective as a special education policy specialist, that's a problem with child find. Child find is an obligation of all the school districts to, if something is wrong and the kid is missing too much school or somehow not able to get to school or not able to thrive in the school, there's an obligation for the school to look into that, to do some kind of an evaluation. And I've seen that as a huge glaring issue in my school district and really generally across the state. I think, now I see people on social media. I talk to friends of mine who don't have kids who are in the same situation as mine have been and haven't probably really paid that much attention to what I'm having to do with my own kids over the last couple of years. But they're really struggling with working, keeping their kids on some kind of a schedule. It really starts to affect your health, the kids' health. It affects the family's health. It becomes a huge mental health concern when they don't have that structure and they're not able to access what is typical.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No,
when you talked about mental health and structure, in your work, the school district you live in and I live in, I don't think they're doing a great job right now in being able to provide the mental health supports around the lack of structure that is happening. How can Child Find support that maybe going forward, or what can we do maybe going forward? What's an idea?
Well, I think it's very difficult because at this point, every kid has individualized needs, and some kids are able to kind of stay on the track that they're put on right now because everyone's online and none of the schools, everyone's just kind of like trying to piece this thing together and scrap this thing together. People are realizing, I think teachers are realizing, and parents and kids are realizing en masse how difficult it is for a kid to provide that structure for themselves with no real support and instruction. And that is what kids, more vulnerable kids are dealing with all the time, not just during this, particular time right now, but they deal with it all the time. And, I've seen in my own life and I've seen, through my work, I've seen schools that don't really have the resources that they need to be able to evaluate what a kid needs in order to access school. And so they kind of just let that kid drop out. They let that kid drop out and they say, well, they could do online school. They could do this themselves. And they just think that they can take their curriculum or take their classes that are going on in the normal brick and mortar schools and put them online, and a kid should be able to access that. Well,
exactly. I've been struggling with that because I'm kids that first and foremost live in domestic violence situations, homeless, drug abuse situations, lack of support, no internet, or don't have technology. Right? You're asking them now to embed themselves in a new system. That system is oppressive to everything they know because they don't have the tools to equip them. I was thinking about myself as a 14-year-old, 8th grade, we ended up homeless. And every day till the age of 18 felt like a pandemic, where I was going to feed myself, where I was going to sleep, how I was going to eat, how I stood healthy. If I got sick, who was going to take care of me? Like all those things. And I think about those kids now, right? And who is looking out for those kids right now and their mental wellness, and those kids that all this has done is added another layer. Even if they have parents like you that are advocating for them, if they have internal struggles and issues that they're dealing with, this has just added to that, right? And we do not have a school system set up to provide those mental, social, emotional supports. And this is exposing that is a horrendous failure, like a horrendous failure.
It really is. And I think that, what all of this is highlighting, not just in the education system, but certainly in the education system, is how necessary it is for human connection, no matter what that means. And for people to be working together, there's a lot of, in the kinds of cases that I see and the kinds of cases that I've personally experienced now, there's a lot of finger pointing. There's a lot of throwing up your hands and being like, teachers are like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to support this kid. It must be the parent's fault. The parent isn't providing enough structure, and the parents are looking at the teachers and going, well, you're giving us no structure. And it ends up being this battle between the family and the school sometimes, because no one can do it on their own.
Correct.
We're all teachers, but the reason that our kids are going to school and that there are teachers who are licensed and educated and dedicated to that profession is because that's what they're there to do. And there has to be that family, community, school partnership, which is really lacking in my school district, and I think lacking in education overall. That family, community, school partnership is key to everything. It's that connection, in my opinion.
I think your opinion is right on, right? I think for many of us that have been fighting in these spaces of education, this is highlighting that, right? And like, how then do we move forward and take these? Like, this isn't about like, what are lessons learned? Like, let's move beyond that, right? Like, I think we know the data, like it's time to employ, right? And I keep telling people, this would be the perfect year to put an education initiative on the ballot, because all these parents are going to vote in favor. Everyone that has voted against these taxes on this education, I can guarantee you would vote in favor of it now.
I know.
Because I'm watching what they're writing, and they're like, oh my God, I love my teacher. I love this thing. And I'm like, well, then support them.
Yeah. It's what it's really highlighted in my mind is that, kids with special needs of some sort, whatever that means, have always had this issue. But now even kids who don't usually have those kinds of special needs, they now have the same needs as the other kids. They can't do it on their own. They can't just sit in front of a computer for 8 hours a day and bang out a bunch of content. It's just not doable. It's a human service. And I think that that's what it has really highlighted, is that the education system it's a human service. And what I've seen, certainly over the last 6 years since I've been at the level that I have been at the state level, is that it's not being treated as a human service. It's being treated as a business.
Totally is, totally is. On that note, I want to pause this there, Lisa. We take a song break in the middle. I have Lisa Weiss, an education specialist, policy specialist, community advocate, mother who has just been fighting for her children. And let me tell you, people know who she is in our local community school district, and they should, because if you're showing up and fighting for your children, I think that people should listen and people should give you the space. And so I want to talk about a little bit of that on the other side of this. But I have Lisa Weiss and Jose Silva, and we have some casting crowns for you, broken together. As we think about this time together, just want us to reflect. So I'll see you all on the flip side. Lisa, stay with me. Don't go anywhere. I'm Jose Silva, and it's just great to be back with you all. And it's just amazing to be with you all today on this amazing but yet chilly, cold day in Colorado as we participate in our quarantine. And so I think I've been home since, what would this be? March 5th. So I'm on long end. And I have today with us Lisa Weiss, an education policy advocate, specialist and advocate and activist in our community. But more importantly, she has been a mother who has been on the front lines fighting for her three children, all of which that, in many school districts and school systems would have been easier to see them drop out, as you were talking about. That the way you phrased the dropout piece, Lisa, has really just kind of been sitting with me, that they really drop out of a system, right? Because they have no other supports, and yet you've done everything you can in your power to ensure that your children remain in this system. And so I just wanted to come back and ask you, what do you think is the greatest need for our kids in education right now? I know.
To be invested in it, to be valued, to know that they are valuable as human beings, that they're not just this cog in the wheel, that they're not just there to pass their tests. Mm-hmm. I guess I see that very much because of my own children, and I don't like to air their business too much. My kids are private about their struggles and all of that kind of stuff, but I think that has been the biggest factor for them, is that they are very bright. And I think I think all kids are bright. I think all kids have gifts. And I think that the problem is that children are generally not the focus of education anymore, because it's become so privatized and it's become so business oriented instead of people oriented. And I think moving back the focus toward education being a human service is really at the core of the whole thing. And teachers being, it's about the people, not just, it's about the kids, it's about the teachers, it's about the families. Like, school administrators are people. And it's the whole thing is being treated as a business. And I think that is at the core of the problem. It's about money instead of about human beings.
You hit it on the nail. It's about money instead of human beings. And that is where we have failed. It should not be about business. Educating kids is not a business. It's a human right. It's a human services issue, as you talked about, right? I think that
it is. And I have personally fought very hard to keep my kids in the public school system. I was raised in the public school system here in Colorado. I was raised in Denver public schools. I went all the way through. I went to public colleges. I'm a big believer in the public school system. And now, after fighting for all three of my kids to stay in the public school system and get what they need and stay with their friends, they're all three out. I'm not even in the public school system anymore. All three of mine are in the private school system, and I don't even know what's going on in my in my school district at this point, because I've taken myself out of the whole thing because I couldn't get what my kids needed there.
How does that
not access it?
Well, I guess it's a two-part question. How did that make you feel, and how do you feel about that now? Like, is the anger even more so, or are you just?
I'm not angry.
You're just exhausted.
Yeah, I'm not angry, and Yeah, it's been exhausting. I think that has been the biggest thing, is just how exhausting it is for my whole family to have gone through this with all three of my kids in succession. You know, they're all different. They're all different kids. I have a friend who has been fighting the public school system in Colorado since 2014. She's got a bright kid who hasn't been able to be educated in the public school system and can't even find a private school for 6 years. And I've known that, you know, I've known those kinds of people. Those are people from my tribe. Those are the people that I represent. Those are the people that I stand up with and help advocate for. Those are the kids that I focus on. And I've known that for all this time. It didn't personally happen to me until a couple of years ago. And it's been illuminating how difficult it is for a family and how it affects every area of your life. It affects your ability to show up at work. It affects your ability to pay your bills. It affects your ability to have relationships with people outside of your home. It's very, very isolating. And the isolation is what people are now really, really focusing on, you know, with this whole thing, with the pandemic that's happening now. That's what's happening to people, to families, to kids, all over the place, all the time. It's been happening. It's an open secret. You know, it's been happening always to families like mine and families like the ones that I know. And now is a time that people are understanding what isolation really feels like and why it happens. And I hope that we can make some change out of it. I hope that people are able to relate to families like mine now, because that word dropout, which is what your kids end up being, it's hard for a kid and it's hard for a family to kind of accept that word because it has such a negative connotation, but it is the reality of the situation. And all it means is that there's nothing wrong with the kid. There's something wrong with the system if there are that many kids that can't access it and are dropping out of it.
Thank you. It can't be the kids or the families, because they're all entering in. I think about all the kids I started first grade with in DPS, and how many of us made it and how many of us didn't. How many of my family members who I grew up with in Montbello, not one family member of mine that I grew up with in Montbello graduated from Montbello High School or any school. I left and went to West and CIS, and middle school went to Merrill and not MLK. And I'm the only one in my entire family of us kids that grew up out in Montbello and Amadorf on the West Side to have graduated.
Right.
It's not that I was better, or it was the system that was designed in such a way that not everybody was going to make it. Because how do all my cousins not, like, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, no, I think that our world as it's been set up right now has been sending a message to people that there's something wrong with them, that there's something wrong with the kid. And that is what needs to change, because there's nothing wrong with the people. There's something wrong with all of the systems, that's for sure. And the self-esteem and what that does, the hit that these kids take and the hit that these families take. I mean, honestly, it's been a struggle for me to, deal with all of the things that come with having to go through this. It's hard. It makes you feel like, you're not enough. It makes you feel like you're not doing enough, like you're not a good enough mom, like you're not a good enough whatever. And it's something that, it's a grief. It's a piece of that grief cycle that, like, everyone has to go through, but it's hard. And when it happens to you, you don't have this community of support. You don't have this system of support. They just basically are like, go away. We don't want to deal with the mess.
That's frustrating. And that has to be frustrating and sad. Lisa, we have about a minute left here, and I want to give you the floor for any advice you might have for parents that are struggling, fighting the school system. This is your time.
I just really think that what's most important is that people respect their kids, that people respect each other, and that you find what works for your kid. I really believe right now that it's difficult to find what works in our systems as they're set up right now. public and private. It's very, very difficult. And kids have individualized needs, all of them. Everyone is gifted. Everyone has challenges. I deal in twice exceptionality, which means that you're gifted and you have a disability educationally. I see everyone as twice exceptional. I'm twice exceptional.
Yeah,
that's how I see people. And just keep doing what you know is right for your family and your kids, and try and leave all the noise behind and just keep doing what's right.
So much, Lisa. Thank you so much for that powerful ending. That was, man, that says it all and sums it up. I'm Jose Silva. This has been Tuesday Metro. Thank you so much, Lisa, to joining us. And to all of you out there, as I always say to you all when we end, be kind, show love, and make sure that you know that you prosper and matter. And so be kind to somebody this week and go out and find peace. Peace with all of you. Lisa, thank you so very much. You all have a blessed day, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care.
Thank you.